Welcome to Heart and Soul, a place where everybody is welcome and everybody is hopefully happy to be here. This is supposed to be a bright spot in your day to bring inspiration and hope and love and joy. And you're going to love today's guest, Stephanie Peterson, who is an extraordinary actor and has a new film coming out, but has done so much. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Kim. I would love to say that you are also just a bright light. So this is wonderful. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, well, thanks so much. I'm so happy that you are here. And I have to say, we're going to talk about some heavy stuff today. But first, we're going to talk about you. Were you raised in Ohio?
I did. Yes, I was born in Ohio. I was raised there until I was 8. And then I was mostly raised in Houston, Texas.
That's a move from a Midwest girl to a Texas girl. So how was that? How was that for you moving at 8 years old? Is that hard?
A little tough. I think at 8, you're still really flexible. You haven't made all of your hardcore friendships yet or anything like that. So I definitely call Texas home. I have family in Ohio and I love Ohio and I love my family there. But I definitely call Texas home and feel pretty established in Texas.
Yeah, well, Texas is really a great state. I love Texas. It gets awfully hot in
Yes.
summertime, I have to say. So, as an 8-year-old, did you expect to grow up and be an actor? Was that your dream?
Let me tell you, I wanted to be um, a movie star. Actor, was that important? Maybe not. And I also wanted to be an archaeologist.
Oh,
Somehow in fourth or fifth grade, we have some amazing museums in Houston, and we
mm.
went to a natural science museum and saw an amazing exhibit on Pompeii and the excavation on that. And that fascinated me so much. So when I was a child, I always said I wanted to be a movie star and an archaeologist.
Well, I think that's a pretty common combination. I think there's a lot of people out there with the
We do
same
that all
dream
the time.
and living the same life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That is so what about like school plays and that kind of thing? Were you
Yes, so I did theater, musical theater when I was a child, and it was so wonderful for me. It was very developmental. I feel like I look back and it was a bright light in my childhood of going away and performing. I definitely have always performed. So I certainly learned acting along the way. I have a theater degree and did learn to love actually the art of acting and not want to be a celebrity. But so now I just love being a working actor and I'm thankful to do that. But yes, musical theater as a child, all through my teen years. And then in high school, I would do the school plays. I was also in marching band, so that's a little difficult to do both. So I would do whatever spring plays they would let me be a part of, or I would do behind the scenes stuff, basically any way that I could be involved. You got to give a shout out to your high school theater teacher. That's Beth Crocker. So, and also Manny and Tina Capeo in Houston. I really, really had such a great time learning from them as a child. Excuse me, as a child actor in community theater. Community theater is such a great place for kids to form if people are into acting or wanting their children to try it out or the children are expressing community theater. I cannot say enough good things about it.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and I love to go to community theater, and that's a
Yes.
large part of it too. So even if you don't have aspirations of being up on the stage, go and support your community theater. People work so hard and they do such a great job. I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Civic Theater in town is fantastic. They do a great job with everything. I love it. So support your local
Yes, I totally
theater.
agree. And the talent will blow you away. The
Mhm.
talent will blow you away of what these people are volunteering to give to their community. It's amazing.
Yeah, no kidding. And then you can see them in the grocery store.
Yeah,
So it works
exactly. You
out
can
great.
actually get an autograph. You can have the full experience.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so then you went to college and you were a theater and
Yeah.
math major.
And math. Yes. So no, I didn't become an archaeologist, but somewhere along the way, so and to back up a little bit, in high school I did not like math. Like I could do math, but it was not a love, and I did have to work at it. If I didn't work at it, I would get D's in math. So I went to college, and in a theater degree, you only have to have one math credit. I wonder why. And so you just have to take like a community math, like a life skills math course. And so that was really fun. Well, my professor, Jill Dumasnell, she was amazing. And I had so many amazing, strong female math professors. And that was really formative for me. I think if it had been very male dominated, I wouldn't have seen myself in that scenario. But she reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in tutoring math. And I always am interested in jobs, right? You know, you want to make some money in college. And so I signed up to tutor it, and I was like, was this a good decision for me? You know, but once I started teaching it, I loved it, and I fell in love with math. It's such a twist that God really brought into my life that I never would have expected. No one ever guesses that they're going to be a mathematician, I think. I don't hear children saying that when they're children, what they want to grow up to be. But yeah, so I added that. So I have a double major in theater and mathematics. And I do use that. Most working actors in Texas are bivocational. So I do have a pay the bills job where I actually use my math degree as well.
Wow. What do you do to use your math
I
degree?
work as an analyst for an oil and gas consulting firm. So a lot of database management. I'm on our software side now. So a lot of quality assurance on our software, making sure the software works like it's supposed to, writing requirements, a lot of nerdy little stuff, but I love it.
So how does it work out though when you do get a part? How does it work out to juggle that?
And it is a little bit of a juggle because now my job has known for a long time of my working actorness. And so I'm actually a contractor, so I don't get employee benefits. I'm not an employee, but I basically can inform my team what I need to do before I leave. And if I have to take time off, I make them aware. I work out whatever I need to on their end. And because I'm a contractor, I can make that happen. And they're really wonderful about it. And I'm very blessed by that. I really feel like God brought that into my life for my family because it benefits my family, being able to be flexible as well. And I still have something that I enjoy doing every day when I'm not on set, which is my, love, my artistic love. So it's really, I feel very blessed.
That's good. That's good. It's nice to have the combination. And so it's a good thing that you majored in math instead of
Yeah,
archaeology because that job is probably easier to just kind of stay put and and juggle the two careers. So that's cool. And what a funny way to come into math. I
yeah,
mean, I agree. Like it's always interesting to me, right? Like what gets dropped in your lap or what your passion becomes, right? And how that develops, like how it even happens. And then you look back and you go, oh, thank you, Jesus. Like you gave
sure.
this to me because
Yeah.
look, now I can use this and do this and do this. And
Yes. And as a
yeah,
child, I can remember the thing that made me want to be a movie star at that time was not celebrities. I don't know if you remember this, but back in the day, I would like to say that after a movie viewing on TV, often you could also watch the behind the scenes and the making of. Do you remember that?
I do
And
remember that.
that was like my favorite part of watching movies. Or if you rented the VHS, it would be on there as like a special feature, or once the DVDs came out. That was my favorite thing, was to watch making of movies, behind the scenes. And it fascinated me how this whole thing came together. And that's why I love being on set. I have no problems with being a day player, being there one day for one character that is a supporting role versus, large roles. I am just so happy to be there because movie magic is what made me fall in love with this industry and what made me want to be an actor. And then obviously my musical theater background made me want to do the acting part of it, but just being on set is a happy day for me. I just love the crew. They're so talented, watching them. And then when you watch how it turns out post production, it's just truly a huge team effort.
Well, and I've been told that the whole filming is not even 50% of the entire deal, right? Because
Right.
it's the editing, the everything that has to happen to
Yeah.
actually turn it
And
into a movie.
before I show up to set, I might have some meetings, some talks with the directors, some character, and I'll do my own personal character prep. But the crew has been meeting and the producers have been meeting in pre-production meetings to prep for the actual shoot dates. My shoot dates might be 5 to 15 shoot dates on set. They've been meeting for months to plan so that when we get to set, everything works seamlessly, and truly gifted people to be able to pull that off.
Yeah, it's a job. I
Yeah.
it's a big job, and there are so many people who do it so well. And those are the fun movies to watch when it's all put together so well, and the fun TV shows. And
Yes.
you've been on several, you've been on a bunch, which has got to be a good time. Is there a
Yeah.
favorite character that you've played?
That is such a good question. A favorite that I've been on?
Hmm.
Yes. Okay. So I would say the two projects I've worked on that have been my favorite have been unDEFILED, which is the most recent movie, and Vindication, which is a crime series. And they're both Christian films and done by filmmakers. And the reason that those were such great projects for me was, first of all, I fell in love with the scripts. When I read the scripts, I was blown away by the writing. And that's not always the case. Sometimes you'll get a script and you're like, okay, this is a good story. I can see how this will play out. But sometimes you get a script and you're like, wow, I hope I get to be a part of this, because if you see the end product, you're going to know just that the writing was good. That makes everything easier. And then I met the directors of both projects. Matt McCauley is the director of unDEFILED. Jared O'Flaherty is the director of the Vindication crime series. And both directors were so wonderful to work with. They weren't there. Sometimes, and I do a lot of commercials as well. So time is money, and commercial directors are lovely, and commercial directors are as well, and they're amazing. But sometimes you're in, you're out, you leave, you have not as many connections personally because you're just there to do your job, which is great. That's what you need to do. That's what you were hired to do. But when you can have that time with a director who is interested in, what do you think of this character? How do you feel they have come into this situation? And how do you think people are going to view them? And they want to have that artistic conversation that just makes your little artistic heart beat, and both of those directors were very much actors directors and very interested in me and what I was bringing to my character. And I would say, I bet they were with everyone, as you see them having conversations with each actor. And then on set, same thing. They were very trusting. I feel like both of them were very trusting of what I was bringing. They didn't feel the need to constantly correct or do line reads where it's like, let's say it this way now. And they were really just trusting and handing these characters over to me. And then also at the end, when you leave, you're like, okay, I'm done. I'll see it when it comes out, I guess. But these directors were both so kind to follow up, to make appreciation for the work that I was able to bring, and also just to make sure if we needed anything, exchange communication. And so both of them were just lovely to work with. And I could see both of their visions for the project. Matt McCauley, especially with unDEFILED and having this vision to bring people into recovery from addiction using a feature film, so novel, and I think very current, because film really moves people. And so I loved working on those films because I loved the writing and characters, but also I loved the people who were behind the art.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And that is a pretty interesting project, unDEFILED, because it
Yes.
is, it not just tells a story, but it's a film that hopes to bring change.
Yes.
Yeah, which I
And
think.
I think most filmmakers would say they want to bring some change, right?
Mhm.
And what's cool about unDEFILED is that was the vision from the beginning, because I know Matt McCauley, the director, and the psychologist consultant, Dr. Kevin Wisman, they literally met. Their first conversation about the film was, could we use a film to help people into recovery, versus let's make a film. How could we help people from the film? It was, how can we help people who are struggling with pornography addiction? Could we make a film to do that?
Mm.
And that is, I think, a pretty novel process.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, yeah, I would say that's probably not the way it usually goes. I mean, if you're a film,
Yeah,
you're thinking film, film, film.
yeah,
And so it's cool. Matthew's heart was, could we use, or what could we use, and would a film work? And that's just kind of
sure.
so.
Yeah, because it's easy to go see a film, right? Like everybody wants to go see a film, an entertaining film, an action film, a baseball film. Those are some of my favorite types of films. And then just to know that that film is going to maybe spark some thoughts in you, some conversation, memories of things that you've had to go through, maybe your own trauma, even, and then help you on the back end, not leave you hanging because Undefiled partnered with Pure Desire Ministries and Boulder Recovery because a lot of local churches are doing everything they can with their resources, but not all of them have the resources to have, say, a packaged recovery ministry with recovery groups, similar to like 12-step programs. And some churches do, even small churches. So it's not about the size of the church, it's just the resources that every church has are different. And so what's great is after you do see the movie, if you need immediate touch point to those recovery resources and your local church doesn't have that, or your city, even, let's say you're in a small city and you don't have those resources, they have those partnerships right there, and they have an 8-week video series leading you through some recovery opportunities. So I think that is great because it's very start to finish,
Mm,
and it invokes that desire for change without leaving you hanging, and I think that's really powerful for people.
yeah, absolutely. Pretty genius, really. That's
Yes.
smart. So undefiled. Give us a synopsis of the story.
Yes, so Undefiled really centers around a sort of washed up baseball player. He's been trying to make it to the major leagues his whole life. His childhood centered around disappointment from his father, even in the area of baseball. And he was exposed to engaging with pornography early in life and has struggled with it his entire life. And he's a family man. He is, in the sense that he's married and has children, but he is in a lot of ways neglected and abandoned his family, always seeking the better baseball opportunity and traveling for baseball. And all of those give him even more opportunity to engage with pornography to the point where it's an addiction. And while dealing with his addiction, in kind of a sub story, he encounters a sex trafficking victim, and he's encountered with the reality of, I want to help her. How can I help her? While at the same time, he doesn't realize in the middle of this that he's actually supporting sex trafficking just through pornography engagement, which he thinks is just him and his phone. So it's a very intriguing storyline that I think a lot of people have some experience or touch points with. And the story centers around, can he help this sex trafficking victim? Can he beat his pornography addiction? Can he do it without Jesus? I don't think so.
Yeah, no, much more difficult without Jesus for sure. The storyline is great, and I love that they bring in sex trafficking because that is a subject we don't talk enough about.
Yeah.
It comes out around Super Bowl time, or
Yes.
whenever, when we know there's going to be a big moment. But
Yes.
otherwise, it's something that it's so easy to just kind of turn away from and not realize the impact and how many girls and boys, but
Yes.
mainly girls and women,
Yes.
are trafficked. And
Right.
really, it's slavery. It's our
Yes.
modern day slavery. I mean, they can't leave.
Yes.
They
Right.
can't leave. And
Yes.
lucky if they're treated okay, but not necessarily treated okay. And
Yes.
there's tens of thousands in the US alone,
Yes.
and
They're not
worldwide.
all trapped in houses. We get that vision of they must be trapped in a van, trapped in a house. And that is true. I think that does certainly happen. But there are people that are just confined. They have no way to support themselves. They have no way to break free. If they do break free, they are blackmailed. They have been brainwashed. There's so much, sadly, manipulation that goes into the relationships that usually come into sex trafficking. And so I am also glad that they really didn't shy away from that in a Christian film. They were willing to go there. They're willing to talk about pornography addiction and sex trafficking. And and they were willing to talk about how they're connected, because it's not that Christians are not engaging in pornography. Christians are, as well as everyone else, because it's a very difficult thing to turn away from once you've been exposed to it. And so I'm really glad that they're not shying away from that topic and showing people, hey, you may not even be thinking about it, but this and this, they go hand in hand. So if you're thinking, I want to help sex trafficking victims, and you're still engaging in pornography, then those are at odds with each other. And so pornography addiction is very difficult to break, and recovery is really needed. And so we really, want people to go into recovery and live in the light and let God help them, because God has already given us the victory. The resurrection is assured. We have the victory through Christ. First Corinthians 15 says, and that includes bringing our sin into the light and letting him help us kill it.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's not a punishment to
Yeah,
bring it into the light.
that's
It's
right. It's
redemption.
freedom.
It's freedom. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting because what you said is so true. I think it can be easy probably for people to engage in pornography and think that it's completely harmless that they're engaging, but it changes things like statistically how it
Yeah.
harms families.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
And my character in Undefiled, so I played Amber Jennings. I play the wife. And this is a really fascinating sub story of the film, because Amber Jennings, Mitch's wife in the film, she doesn't know yet about the pornography addiction. She doesn't know about the sex trafficking victim. But what she does know is her husband, before all of that, has abandoned and neglected her to his job. And I think a lot of women, even if they haven't dealt with pornography in their home, they may have felt that, maybe a husband has unintentionally neglected them, even for work or things like that, or abandonment. Those sort of feelings come up, and then she encounters that he has a pornography addiction, and so she was already feeling alone. Now she's even feeling more ostracized, more alone. And Amber's character is a really important one in this film, because once someone who has been struggling with pornography addiction gets into recovery, hallelujah, this is a beautiful moment. It is worthy of all of the resources that that person needs to support them on their journey. But we don't want to forget about the spouse who has been betrayed. And it may not be the man who is a pornography addicted. That is very common, but it could be the wife. So I don't want to leave that out. So I'm saying spouse here, but I'll continue to say wife just because that is more common and that's what's in the film. But we don't want to forget about that betrayed wife. And so I really want any wife who's listening today and has had a spouse who is struggling with addiction to pornography and getting help themselves, I want that betrayed wife to hear that they are worthy of healing too, and they are worthy of recovery too, and they are worthy of those resources too, and to go ask for them if no one has offered them, because they are out there.
mm,
Including if you reach out, if your local resources don't have it, Pure Desire Ministries, Boulder Recovery definitely are very experienced with betrayed spouses. And I want those women or men to feel empowered that they need some healing too, because they've had some betrayal and neglect. And those are trust issues that are hard to build back up. And you might need support. I think most people do need support in that, especially if you don't have it currently in your local church. Then it's great to go to the next step and reach out and find that support that you need through recovery groups.
right. Well, I think when you've had trauma in your life, it's okay to be mad, right?
Yeah.
Like if you find out your husband is addicted to pornography, that's not a moment any woman
Yeah.
wants to ever have. And it's okay to be angry and upset. It's
Yes.
okay to have whatever feelings it is that you have. And there's some grief involved, right? Because you
Sure.
think your marriage is one way and then you find out that
Yeah.
it's like having a mistress and it's
Yes.
but worse. So it always helps when you've gone through something to talk to other people who have gone through the same thing because nobody can relate to you like someone who has actually kind of walked in your shoes, right? Had the
Yes.
same experience. People can empathize, we can feel sorry for people and think that we know, but the reality is you don't. And
Right.
it can be such an embarrassing thing that you don't necessarily want to tell your church folk,
Yeah.
hey, by the way, if I found out my husband, and so I think there's probably a lot of not connecting with other
Yes,
people.
that's so good. I'm glad you brought that up. That shame narrative is so powerful and it makes us hide. And it makes the addict hide, first of all, right? That's what's happening. He's getting lied to, saying, oh, if you bring this out, your whole life is over. You're never going to get freedom from this anyway. All these lies from the enemy coming into their head. And then, yeah, once the wife finds out, the husband, if it was the husband, he knew all along, but he was feeling the shame of to come forward. Usually, often, the wife has been blindsided. This is the first time they're understanding the depth of what's been happening in their marriage. And so it's like a fire hydrant of feelings coming. And like you said, they're all natural, they're all human emotions coming out. And it's okay to experience those, and it's going to feel a lot. But that shame, you're right, it is. It's going to creep in and say, well, now you can't tell everyone about this. You can't get help because now everyone's going to know this is part of your story. And so if you feel that way and you don't feel like you have those safe people, recovery ministries and recovery groups are great for that, because one of the best things recovery ministries do is keep your story safe so that you feel safe to get the healing that you need.
Which is so, so, so important.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, there's so many things that it's easy to go, well, I'll feel better, time will heal, time heals all wounds kind of a thing.
Right.
And but so often if you don't get help, if you don't get support in going through it, the trauma just sticks with you and
Oh, it
you're
does.
dragging it around with you everywhere you go. And so
Wow,
it
that's so
affects
good.
other relationships too, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you can't trust, because your trust was broken and your trust didn't get healed, or like you said, you're just dragging it behind you or stuffed it in your backpack or stuffed it under the rug. And so yeah, then you're not going to trust the next person in your life maybe, and it just snowballs. You're so right.
And loneliness too. You can feel
Yes.
alone if you're not in a community, in a group with other people who have gone through the same thing. Man,
Yes.
there's such loneliness there, and that doesn't ever add up to anything good.
Yes, and I'm so glad you said that, because that is another aspect of when you go into a maybe a betrayed spouse's group. Those are out there. And then you feel like hope, because other people have gone through it and they have gone and seen the other side and they have had healing and they have built trust again, and their hearts have, been healed by the Holy Spirit, and they have been carried by him. Jesus said his burden is easy and his yoke is light. And it's hard to trust that in those moments. And then when you're on the other side, or you hear from someone on the other side, you can see that that is true. And then you can experience at least hope for your story moving forward, even if you're in the darkest part of that story. That hope is so essential. And that's why I love that you do a lot of interviews about people's stories, because, and that's what's great about Christian films, because we're really about that better story, the Christian story of redemption. And that's why God uses stories so much, because stories are so powerful. They speak to our soul, and feature films, short films, creating an actual arc of a story. It can give our heart hope for the future. Those stories are just testimonies. I love them because it's so powerful.
It is. It is just so powerful, and it is all about story, and it's all because it comes down to it's all about people.
Yeah.
And we're all living lives, and we're all individuals, and going through whatever it is that we're going through. So knowing that there's hope, that there's other people that have gone through what you've gone through, that come to the other side and are free, are healed,
Yes.
are whatever. I mean, it will forever be a part of your story, right?
Yes.
It will never leave you, forever be a part of your story. But I did this year, by the way. I dedicated a year to figuring out the true meaning of love. So I took
Mm.
First Corinthians 13, love is patient, love is kind, does not envy. And I took one word or phrase a month. And I was in Haiti most of the time while I was working on it.
Wow.
And the things that I found out about love changed the way you look at everything, I think. And one of the things about love is love keeps no record of wrongs.
Yes.
And that to me, hard month, I didn't know if I could do that month because I was like, well, you might forgive, but you don't forget. And
Yeah.
so how does that work? And what I discovered about it after sleeping outside with tarantulas and snakes and chupacabras or whatever's lurking in the
Right.
bush, listening to the voodoo drums and whatever, being scared to death because the men had to sleep inside for whatever reason. And I'm outside.
Wow.
And I was bitter and angry and working on love keeps no record of wrongs. And what I discovered is we pick the narrative for everything. We pick the narrative. So you can be two people in the same situation, but looking at it two completely different ways,
Right.
right? So, one person might drive by the homeless person that is at the corner asking for money and go, "Hi, what a lazy guy. Why doesn't he go get a job? What's going on with him?" Another person can drive by and go, "Wow, how'd that guy end up on the street?
Mhm.
What does he really need? And is he getting what he needs?" And just have a whole different narrative about the
Right.
same person in the same situation.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to say what's right or what's wrong, but we pick the narrative is
No, I
right.
totally think you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, we
So
can
love that
definitely
keeps no record of
present the
wrongs.
same thing.
Yeah, it changes the narrative. You change the narrative. And it's tough to even know that you can change the narrative when you're in the thick of things. You're like, oh no, this narrative will never change because this is real and this is how it feels and this is the pain. This is what I'm going through. And you think you're never going to be able to change that narrative, but you can. It can take time of healing and whatever, but then you can change the narrative and so a freedom can happen. And so anyway, yeah.
That's so good, and it's freeing and to know that and to live it out, and I think that's another not just I mean, other people's stories, again, we were just talking about, are so powerful for that reason where you can see the other side of their story. And sometimes we have to do that for our own story, right? We have to look backwards. Let's say you're in something really difficult and dark right now. Okay, pause that because those feelings are there and they're real, and God knows it. He gave you those feelings, and it's okay that you're feeling those things. But look backwards at other times in your life when He has brought you through something that you thought, this is never going to end. I'm never going to heal from this. And I think that's what increases my faith so much is looking back at things in my life that I've been through or experienced and seeing how much he increased my faith in him and my trust in him. And that just gives me assurance. I went through, my husband and I went through a season of infertility, and this was a long time ago now because my oldest is 14, but while we were going through that, those feelings were so heavy and so hard to bear as a young person. And every day I would say, God, I am hurting. I want this so bad, but more so, I just want you. And I want you to increase my trust in you and my faith in you. Help me every day to do that more, even in this pain. And he did. He was faithful through those seasons. Even before I got pregnant with my son, even before that, he was faithful every day to meet me where my feelings were and still increase my trust in him. And I think if we're ready to lay that obedience at his feet of, hey, I'm going to trust you because you're outside of time and I'm not, and I can't see the bigger picture, and it's all for your glory anyway. That's what we're here for. Whatever you're using in my story, whatever hard stuff, how can I trust that you're going to use it for your glory?
Yeah, because it can be awfully hard to see in the
Yeah.
moment. And I think sometimes too, as Christians, we think we can't feel that way. Like, oh,
Right.
God is good, God is love, God is, we trust and God is always there with us. He never abandons us, he doesn't leave us, all the things that
Yeah.
that we know as Christians, but it is perfectly okay to have all of those feelings. It is really okay to question God, are you even there?
Right.
Because when you are in those darkest moments, you can feel abandoned not just by your spouse, but also by God. Like, where,
Yeah. Oh, yes.
right? Yeah. How did
Yes.
that work for you? did you feel?
Yes, that I think is something I had to really wrestle with when I was going through prep to become Amber Jennings, because I really had to go to that place of she is already feeling alone in her marriage and raising her kids. And now she's feeling completely rejected and abandoned by him and the Lord. She is feeling like nothing is possible anymore in my life. I've done everything I can to make this, to keep this ship going. And it's all fallen apart around me. And I had to really spend time in that place with Amber before I went on set to know how empty was she feeling? How alone was she feeling? How was she getting through every day in this pain? And there's a scene at the end of Undefiled, and I don't want to ruin anything. There's not like a big spoiler or anything like that. But there's a moment where you don't know what's going to happen with Amber and Mitch, and you have some hope for them, but you're not sure because you haven't seen the end of their story yet. And I think at that point, Amber is in a different place. She's not in that hopeless place anymore. I think she has seen God is still with me. She may not believe anything else. Any other person is ready. She's not ready to trust the people in her life who have hurt her. But at that point, she has seen God is trustworthy, and I can at least go there. But you do sometimes go in the bowels of darkness where you feel like he's not, and he totally is the whole time. And if you think back on the hardest parts of your story in your own life and trauma you've experienced, and if you have those moments where you relive them, when those come up, if you practice picturing him there with you, you can see and feel his heart breaking for you and this devastation that he has for, and his empathy for your experience and your story. He's never going to leave us. He was there the whole time, and he will be with us.
Yeah, so beautifully said. And I love that advice to just, even in your darkest moments, just picture God walking alongside you and hurting for you, because
Yeah.
that's for real. That's just real. But to actually make an effort to picture it,
Yeah.
could be a game changer for people.
Yeah.
That is great advice. So let's spend a minute on that, preparing for Amber. So you've got a family, you've got other things going on in life, and yet now you have to get into this character that is in such pain and loneliness.
Mhm.
Does it affect your home life? Does it
Mm.
affect you in other ways in life?
That is such a great question. And probably every actor is different on this question because everyone uses different techniques to prepare. And the way that I prepare, my acting probably doesn't affect my home life, but I certainly will process some of these things with my husband, and we'll share with each other, parts that we're struggling with, or to identify or to get to that depth. But I am certainly have a lot of deep emotions. And so if I spend enough time kind of in that character's world, I also really am always thinking with prepping for a character, what are they really, really needing? And this isn't just like, oh, they need to get groceries today. No, they need to feel loved. Like you have to go to that life or death point. What is life or death from them if they're not getting their groceries right now? Whatever the scene is. And so for Amber, I really had to spend time thinking, what is life or death for her? Is her marriage her life or death? If she finds this out, is this going to wreck her marriage, her children's lives? And you do have to kind of go there mentally, and you spend some time there. But the best way to come out of that for me personally, if I've been in a difficult spot with my character and I don't want, like you said, to kind of like ruin the whole day. I've definitely had auditions I've had to prep for really quick turnaround. And so you have to go deep really fast. And then, yeah, you have to go back and like make dinner and be happy with the kids and all that stuff. So the best thing for me is to say truth statements to myself and do grounding exercises. I
Mm,
don't know what other actors' techniques are, but I will basically timestamp that moment and say that was a different person. That wasn't me. That just happened and now it's over. and then do a lot of grounding techniques. For me, physical grounding works really well. So touching things, having, sensory experiences where I'm like, I'm in this room, I can see these things, I can feel this counter, I can, touch my fingertips together and bring me back into this present moment because I am not that character. God is helping me or using me or whatever in that moment to help tell that person's story to a greater audience that they may not be able to see that story if they don't see it visually. And so he's helping me and using me to do that, but that's not me. And so that is, I definitely have to ground though, if it's a difficult character or a difficult scene to kind of get back to reality. Because if you go there as an actor, you go there, your brain, you can kind of trick it.
Right, right, right. Yeah. How does nature play a role? Because I know
Oh,
for me, right? Because grounding, to be outside, to take my shoes off and put my feet on the ground, there's
yes.
something about that.
Wow.
So how does nature play a role for you?
That's such a great question, and I love that question because I love being outside, and most certainly it can break a spell. Even if you're having a horrible day and you don't wanna go anywhere for the rest of your life, you're gonna stay indoors because you can't do one more thing. Going outside can break a spell on your mind. And, for me, I have very big thoughts that a lot of them I keep to myself because they're just too big, It's like, why am I thinking this huge thought? And very big emotions. And, I can get a little stuck in the head sometimes. And if you go outside, for me, even if I just look up at the sky, there's that sensation of how huge it is. And those thoughts that feel like they're going to take over and live there forever, all of a sudden they're put in their rightful place. They're smaller, they're tiny, they're temporary. And it is very grounding for me. I love that you said take your shoes off and feel the grass. And for me, looking up, sunlight, seeing, I mean, if you look up on a clear day, at least in Texas, you can almost see the arc of the globe, it's just so clear and bright and blue. And that for me just kind of puts me back in, hey, I am one person in an eternity of time of people that God has created. And there's nothing that He is taking me through now or in the future that He hasn't taken someone else through or He isn't capable to do. He is definitely capable. Look what He made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that because it's so true. When you're inside, you're one of three, one of four, however many are in your household. You walk outside, you're one of the world. And uh and then it's easier to get outside yourself because it can be so easy to just stay stuck inside yourself and not venture outside. Like
Yeah.
with grief, which it's grieving, right? When you like I have a friend, oh my gosh, my dear friend that went through a divorce and she grieved and grieved. She never thought that that would happen. And I saw her grief and her pain and I lost my husband 15 years ago and there were so many similarities in our feelings and our losses. And one of the things I discovered is you got to get outside yourself. You can wallow for a while, like
Yeah.
feel free, like,
Yeah.
this happened to you.
Yeah.
This actually happened to you. And
Yeah.
so wallow for a while.
Hmm.
But when you can move again, when
Yeah.
you can do something again, if you go do something, if you serve somewhere, if you
Yeah.
help somebody in any way, you get outside yourself. And
Yes.
that's when healing can happen.
Yes. It's so true. And it almost puts a little bullet point or a timeline stamp in that moment of grief where you can say, okay, I'm still grieving. It's not over, but this part's over. Now I have another moment in my life, and now here's another portion of my grief, and this might be less or it might be look different. So yeah, I love that. I think you're so right. And having your local community, your local church community that you're connected with, and if you don't have that, try and seek that out. That can be such a life-giving thing during any grieving moment or struggle that's going on in your life. And those can be those little markers as well because they get you outside of yourself, whether, whether you're serving them or they're serving you, whatever it is, you have real human connection around you regularly. So powerful.
Hmm. Hmm. Going back to the whole porn thing, I met a guy who was a porn star. He's no longer a porn star, and he wrote a book about it. Joshua Broom, um, and so good. And he talked about the porn life, and he wanted to be an actor, but got approached one day because he was a waiter, like a lot of people who want to act
Yes.
do while they're waiting for the next role,
Right.
and got approached and asked if he would come and do this, and he's like, "There's no way," but he decided he'd go to the meeting. They're like, "Just come to the first meeting, just come." And then and then it's like, just try it once, just try it once, and you'll see. And it's so much money, and it's such an easy life, and it's way better than waiting tables, and so much more money, and the allure, the
Yeah.
stories that they tell. And
Yeah.
it's grooming,
Oh,
really.
yeah.
He was groomed, just like
Absolutely.
victims of sexual abuse that that are groomed to so
Yes.
that they're ready for that abuse when it happens.
Right.
And it's horrible. And he said after the first time he was devastated, hated himself, didn't want
Yeah.
to talk to his mom, didn't want to call her, and just felt dirty and nasty and gross. And it's not what you think. But one of the things that he talked about is he came super close to suicide,
Mm.
really close to suicide.
Yeah.
And then, and they're under some other name, right? They're not using their real name. They're under, I don't know, whatever name. I don't know. But uh, somebody, he had a suicide planned, and then somebody called him by name, by his real name.
Wow.
And he's like, oh my gosh, that was such a big thing for him. But the reality is, so many people in the industry commit suicide.
Mm.
There's a high suicide rate in that industry. You can think, man, it's harmless. It's two adults that are, they're consenting, so
Mhm.
they're wanting to do this. And so what's the harm? Well, there's huge harm in it because it's not what we're created to be. That's intimacy is such a beautiful thing that
Right.
we have, but it's beautiful when it's with your one person.
Mhm.
It's not so beautiful when
Mm.
you're doing it for money, when you're doing it in any other way.
Right.
And then, you mentioned too, the trafficking victims are in porn,
Yeah.
and forced to be there, and it becomes their life.
Mhm.
And it's not harmless.
Right.
It's not harmless for the industry,
Yeah.
because the more people that watch, the more money they're going to make,
Oh, yeah.
the longer they're going to do all of that stuff.
Right.
And it's not harmless for the watcher,
Right.
because
Yeah,
that
you're so
gets in
right.
your mind, right? So
Yes.
how did you see that in undefiled, like the
Yeah,
change?
in undefiled, yeah, you know what I really appreciated is that they really didn't shy away from any of that, and they were willing, even Callan Elizabeth Wood, who played the sex trafficking victim, which she was so powerful in the movie. She really was, with the filmmakers, and they actually um were so sensitive to how she had to play this role that they were like, "Look, we don't need to do this or we don't need to do that." And there were things that she was like, "Listen, if they don't see at least a glimpse of the pain and the reality of what this girl's going through, they're not really gonna get it. You're going this far already, right?"
Mm,
And not that there's any nudity or anything like that in the film, but she opened herself up to show audiences so that if they really are unaware, there is so much pain for people who are in that scenario, and like you said, abuse and neglect and manipulation and grooming, for sure, a lot of grooming and brainwashing. And so I really appreciate in Undefiled that they spent that storyline on her, and showing how it was interconnected with pornography use of any sort, even if it's not what you might think of as an addiction, that there's still a victim on the other side. And not only did it affect the user, but then it affected Mitch's family, Amber, and his children. And so it really is a ripple effect, as most addictions are. And, this is one of many. And then how is Amber, the betrayed spouse, how is it affecting, even her at work, at her job? How is she, mentally, now she is focusing on the pain that this has caused. Now she is burdened with the decision making in their marriage of, do I leave him? Do I not? Now I have to make that decision because he's the one going through this. And so it really is a higher level of pain and heartache in many people than just one person. Like, and I think you're right, that's the easy lie that we tell ourselves, or that the enemy's kind of feeding into our head, the world feeds into our head, that it's harmless, that it's just you, that these people consented to this. Well, that consenting might have been through manipulation, brainwashing, which I believe we would all call a sexual abuse. So I think we as a culture have some work to do on this. And so that's why I'm really proud of Light of Life Films for being willing to go there on this topic, because as a Christian filmmakers, they took risk with their own reputation. I know that Matt McCauley was told, like, don't make this film, you'll never get another film, no one will watch it, no one will buy it, no one will show it. Like, he was told everything, that this is just, why are you making this? This is a horrible business decision. Well, that's right, because this isn't about business. This is about freedom from addiction for people, and that's all that matters.
Good for him, and good for you. Good for everybody who's a part of
Yeah.
it, because it is powerful. And oh my gosh, the victim in the movie,
Yes.
it's so hard to watch because she does an outstanding job. The entire movie is one of those
Yeah.
movies that you start watching it and you're transported to a different place. You don't even know where you are. You're so engrossed in the movie. It's that powerful. And oh my gosh, bring Kleenex. Make sure you have Kleenex nearby when you watch the movie, because it is heart wrenching. And and it can be harmful for generations. I mean, if the kids are affected, how is it going to affect their kids? How is it going to affect their families? What's going to happen? And
Yes.
all that stuff just kind of adds up to, let's do right by our people.
Right.
Like, let's do the best that we can, and help each other out. And the statistics are bad. Like, I think it's like 63% of men in church
Mhm.
watch
Yeah, it's very
pornography,
high, and 50% of those, and I believe it's 50% of pastors
and 50% of pastors.
engage with it in some level. And so, yeah, they're not small numbers. It's not a minority of people. And so, if anyone should be tackling this topic, it is the church, right? Because
Mhm.
we should be the safest place for people to come and say, I'm broken and I don't know how to do this alone, and I don't know how to gain freedom from this. And I know it's there because God isn't in the business of bondage, So the enemy is. And so I know it's there, but I don't know how to do it, because you can't do it alone.
Mhm.
Recovery from any kind of addiction, it's almost impossible alone.
Oh, so true. So true. Well, and uh, kind of going back to something that you said earlier that I thought was so wise is she had to make the decision, Amber. The whole
Yeah,
decision was on her, right? And that can be so hard because,
right.
yes, everyone will support you if you walk away.
Mhm.
Not a person in the world would go, no. Well, yeah, I say that. There are people probably that would say, no, you got to stay, you got
Sure.
to stay. But people would understand
Yeah.
if you walk away. Just
Mhm.
like, if he's hitting you and you
Yeah.
walk, for different
Yeah.
reasons, whatever. And so sometimes it could be harder to understand the staying, but
Right.
we need to support the staying. We need to
Mhm.
support the decision. We
Yes.
need to not make it our decision, but let it be
Yes.
our friends, whoever's decision, and
Right. We're not living their
whatever's right
life.
for them. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't know what trauma they had in the past that happened to them before this came into their life. And, like I said, I really hope all betrayed spouses are getting some sort of counseling and or recovery for themselves and healing. And they should, not only have that wisdom from their community, their local church community, but also from professionals that's pouring into them. So if they're walking through recovery and for betrayed spouses themselves, they have wisdom around them and help around them. But you're right, it's not our decision. It's not our life. And I can't imagine being in that decision. And for everyone who is in that decision today, I pray for them to have that local community supporting them around them with whatever help they need, getting them the right counselor. Not all are created equal, but there are counselors who really, what am I trying to say? That specialize in
Right.
this, that specialize in, either sex addiction or pornography addiction or betrayed spouses or marriage betrayal, looking for that right counselor who will give you Christian and biblical counsel and wisdom and love and care. And you need to have that support system around you, because this is not easy. It's not easy, and you don't have to make that decision on day one either. No one's saying that's the first thing you do. The first thing you need to do is go have your feelings and pray and have time with God and
Mhm.
mourn, because you're, like you said earlier, there's going to be grieving and anger, and you're going to have a trajectory of time and
Yeah.
information from the spouse. Is not all going to probably come out on the very first day. So it is a thing, if someone is going through this, to give them time and space and be there for them, to listen without judgment, and
Without
know that
judgment.
their story is not one day or one week long. They're going to
Right.
be in this story for a bit. So how can
Mhm.
you love and care for them through that
And not judge, and
and
not
not
judge
judge them
is
in the
so
midst of it?
huge. Just meet them where they're at
Yeah.
and no judgment. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of friend you want. That's the kind
Yeah.
of friend you wanna be, is, just don't judge, just be there.
Yeah.
So, man, I am so happy that there are things that are, out there, like this movie that's on Amazon Prime right now. It is
Yes.
so good, but it tells the truth about pornography and the truth
Yes.
about trafficking.
Yeah.
And, that people just, I think a lot of people just don't know, don't understand. And
Yeah.
so if you're watching, uh, I know it sounds weird to maybe go to the coffee shop with your friends and go, "Hey, by the way, I learned this about
Yeah.
porn." But
Yeah.
the more people know the truth about it, the closer we get to a solution.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
yeah, because it's something that needs to stop. And
Yeah,
so,
and I know that the filmmakers are open to, they have like a conference model for churches. So if
mm,
you're on church leadership or you want something like this at your church, where they will come in and have a viewing of the movie and then have conversations, Q&A, help them start groups off, things like that. I know the filmmakers have put kind of like a one-day conference together that churches can basically bring them in to do. And so if your church has been kind of, how do we tackle this topic? Because I think that's what the film is about, is we don't know how to start this conversation because it's so heavy. And one sermon is not enough, right? It's like one sermon's great and that's a start because we're talking about it. But what else can we do to help ongoing? And so I think that is a great option, for anyone who is thinking, how can our church talk more about this? Having like a conference kickoff, something like that, I think is a great way to kind of get this conversation started in your local church.
yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that. I have loved this. You're
Me
amazing.
too.
It's been so fun to talk to you. I feel like, we're friends now. So we
Yes,
can
we
hang
are.
out. Yeah, I'll come to Houston. We can just hang. Or you come to Michigan,
Yeah, that sounds
and,
great.
whatever. But I want to thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing everything that you did and being so open to share. And thank you for being a part of this great movie.
Yes,
And everybody should see it. Undefiled. It's on Amazon Prime. Look up online where you can see it. Get it into your local church.
yes.
Do the things, right? Get in a group if you need a group, whatever it is. But thank you so much. And I appreciate
Thank
you.
you,
Uh,
Kim.
Yeah.
Thanks for hosting us and talking about it and being willing to go there yourself in conversation. I appreciate it. We need people like you. So thank you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, well, this concludes our episode. And so until next week, be blessed.